Laughter's Descent by Calidus. The skies over Ponyville were thick with the swirling hues of Nightmare Night, the moon high and full casting its pale glow on the cobbled streets. Shadows danced with the flickering light of the jack-o'-lanterns, grotesque faces carved into pumpkins lining every doorway. Foals in their ghoulish costumes raced through the streets, their laughter echoing into the night, but beneath that innocent cheer, something darker loomed. Sugar Cube Corner stood festively decorated, bathed in orange and purple light, a beacon of joy in the heart of the town. Yet, inside, Pinkie Pie stood still, the lively energy that usually filled her veins replaced with a cold, calculated calm. Her ever-widening smile stretched, unnatural, almost predatory. In the back, she had been preparing something far from her usual treats. The basement was off limits tonight, closed to all but the most secret of guests. Pinkie had never been quite right since she came back. Nightmare Moon's return had done something to her, unlocked a craving, a need that couldn't be filled with cupcakes and streamers. The friendly laughter now hollow, her energy directed elsewhere, darker, sharper. Ponyville was a toy, and tonight it was playtime. Down by the bridge, Applejack led a small group of foals on a haunted hayride, her voice steady, calm, her amber eyes flicked to the woods around them, sharp with an instinct for danger. But she didn't see the figure creeping through the underbrush, following her path at a distance, quiet as death. No pony noticed. No pony could imagine what would happen next. Lyra Heartstrings wandered the alleyways, her costume cloak dragging behind her, feeling the thrill of Nightmare Night. Something skittered across the rooftops behind her, a shadow moving too fast to catch. She paused, looking over her shoulder, but only found the alley empty. A chill ran down her spine, but she shook it off, quickening her pace. "Bon Bon?" she called out, her voice faltering slightly. "You there?" A low chuckle drifted from the dark. Not Bon Bon. Lyra's heart thudded, the air suddenly heavy with dread. She turned, but too late, from the shadows. A puppet's hand reached out, cold, wooden fingers wrapping around her muzzle, stifling her scream. The mare's eyes widened in panic as she struggled, but the grip was inescapable, the wooden hand too strong for her to break free. "Shh," whispered a voice that seemed to come from everywhere, nowhere. "No need to ruin the night with screams." The puppet's face hovered into view, its cracked grin wide and unblinking, its lifeless eyes glowing with a sinister energy. The strings attached to it disappeared into the black sky above, held by something unseen. Lyra's breath came in ragged gasps as the puppet's other hand came up, trailing a sharp blade. The wooden smile never faltered as it brought the knife to her throat. Blood sprayed the walls in a crimson arc, her body collapsing to the cobblestone, lifeless and cold. The puppet twitched once, twice, before scurrying back into the darkness, leaving only the silence of death in its wake. Meanwhile, in the woods, Rainbow Dash flew overhead, scanning the streets for the perfect prank victim. She loved Nightmare Night. It was the one time of year she could get away with being truly scary. She banked left, her sharp eyes catching sight of a lone figure standing on the edge of town. Curious, she swooped in closer. It was a stallion, motionless, his head tilted in a way that sent a shiver down her spine. She hovered above him, her wings beating silently. Something was wrong. His eyes were wide open, glazed, his jaw slack. Rainbow Dash landed, cautiously approaching, getting closer. She could see that it was Big Mac. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, but Big Mac didn't move, didn't even blink. She frowned, waving a hoop in front of his face. Nothing. Before she could react, a jagged edge glinted in the moonlight, a blade buried deep in his chest. Blood oozed out, staining the ground beneath his hooves. Dash gasped, taking a step back, her pulse racing. The sound of slow, deliberate hoof steps echoed behind her. She whirled around to see Pinkie Pie, but her eyes were different. They gleamed with something dark, something wrong. "Having fun, Dashy?" Pinkie's voice was sweet as ever, but twisted at the edges, as if hiding a secret far too horrible to speak. She took a step closer, a blood-stained cleaver hanging from her mouth. "Pinkie?" Dash stammered, her wings flaring in instinctive fear. What have you done?" Pinkie giggled, the sound high-pitched and unnatural, as though it didn't belong in her throat. "Oh, Dashy, you know me. I love making friends. And sometimes, friends need to go to pieces." Her eyes flicked to the corpse behind Dash, her smile widening. "Stay back!" Dash warned, her voice cracking, but Pinkie only tilted her head, blinking innocently. "Oh, don't be silly. It's Nightmare Night after all, and it wouldn't be fun without a little thrill." She lunged, faster than Dash could react. Ponyville's cheerful facade was crumbling, the town falling into madness as more bodies were found. The festival continued, unaware, the fillies and colts oblivious to the rising count of the dead. Fluttershy, hiding in her cottage on the outskirts, felt the terror prickling at her fur, a sense that something awful was lurking just beyond her door. As the moon rose higher, Ponyville would realize too late, this nightmare night, no pony was safe. Fluttershy's heart raced as she pressed herself against the back of her cottage door. Outside, the shadows seemed to rise with unseen shapes, the quiet too thick, too oppressive. She had heard rumours in town, whispers of missing ponies, blood-soaked alleyways, and dismembered bodies turning up near the edge of the ever-free forest. But surely it was just the overactive imagination of Bowles, right? She trembled, hugging herself tighter, her soft pink mane falling over her eyes as she tried to block out the growing terror gnawing at her insides. There had always been something about Nightmare Night that made her uneasy. It wasn't just the costumes or the pranks, it was the feeling, the way the air grew thick with a sense of dread, how the dark seemed so much more dangerous, alive with hungry things waiting just beyond the light. Her animals huddled close to her, their tiny bodies shaking in sync with her own fear. They could sense it too. Something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the cottage, rattling the windows. Fluttershy jumped, her breath catching in her throat. She didn't dare move. "Fluttershy!" The voice was familiar. Rainbow Dash. "Hey, open up!" Relief washed over her as she hurried to the door, pulling it open just enough to peek out. There stood Rainbow Dash, looking winded but unharmed. Fluttershy's relief was short-lived as she noticed the blood smeared across Dash's foreleg, her fur matted and sticky with it. "Rainbow?" Fluttershy squeaked, her voice trembling. What happened? Are you hurt?" Dash pushed past her into the cottage, slamming the door shut behind her. "I don't know what's going on, but something really messed up is happening, Fluttershy. Pinkie, she's not acting right, and there's this puppet thing running around, and ponies are dead, Shy, like, for real dead." Fluttershy gasped, her knees threatening to buckle beneath her. She had never seen Rainbow so shaken, so genuinely afraid. We have to tell Twilight. She'll know what to do." "I can't find her," Dash muttered, pacing back and forth. "She was supposed to be at the festival, but now, I don't know. And Pinkie," she trailed off, shivering. "There's something wrong with her, Fluttershy. It's like she's enjoying it." Fluttershy's eyes widened. Enjoying what?" Before Dash could answer, There was another knock on the door. 3 soft taps, deliberate, almost mocking. The 2 mares froze, exchanging terrified glances. "Don't open it," Rainbow whispered, backing away from the door. The knock came again, louder this time. Then a voice, sweet, sing-song, and unmistakably Pinkie Pie's. "Oh, Fluttershy, Rainbow Dash, I know you're in there. Come on out, it's nightmare night. Don't you want to play?" Fluttershy's breath hitched, and her wings instinctively flared in panic. Dash grabbed a nearby chair, shoving it against the door as a makeshift barricade. Pinkie's giggle drifted through the cracks, eerie and high-pitched. "Dashy, Dashy, Dashy, you're always such a party pooper." Pinkie's voice lilted. "But it's okay, I brought a little surprise." There was a wet, squelching sound, followed by the unmistakable thud of something heavy being dropped on the doorstep. Fluttershy's stomach turned, bile rising in her throat. She didn't want to know what was waiting outside. She didn't want to see what Pinkie had brought. "Pinkie, stop!" Rainbow yelled, her voice cracking with a mix of anger and fear. "This isn't funny anymore!" Silence. For a moment, it seemed like Pinkie had gone, but then the doorknob began to twist, slowly, deliberately, as if testing the lock. "Let me in, Dashy," Pinkie cooed. "You don't want to see what happens when I really get upset." Across town, Rarity paced the floors of Carousel Boutique, the elegant mare's usual poise shattered by the rising tension in the air. She had heard the rumours, the murmurs of ponies gone missing, of strange sightings in the alleys, but she had brushed it off as just the usual nightmare night mischief. Until now. Her boutique felt too quiet, the ticking of the clock too loud in the oppressive silence. She pulled the curtains tighter, peeking out into the darkened streets. There was no sign of life, no foals trick-or-treating, no pranking ponies lurking about. The streets of Ponyville were deserted, swallowed by shadows. A sudden movement caught her eye, something darting past the window. Rarity's breath caught in her throat as she stepped back, her heart pounding. Was it just her imagination? A knock came from the back room, soft at first, then louder, insistent. "Sweetie Belle?" Rarity called, her voice unsteady. Her little sister had been out earlier with her friends, dressed as a vampire, giggling as they pranked half the town. She should have been back by now. The knock came again. But this time it was accompanied by a faint giggle, a high-pitched, unhinged sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "Rarity," came the sing-song voice of Pinkie Pie. "I need a new dress, something red. You're good at making things pretty, right?" Rarity froze, her blood turning to ice. Pinkie? Is that you, darling? What are you doing?" The giggle grew louder, more frantic, like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, I just thought I'd borrow Sweetie Belle for a little bit. She's been such a good helper. You know, red really is her colour now." Rarity's heart sank as the door to the back room creaked open, revealing a shadowed figure standing in the doorway. It wasn't Sweetie Belle. The figure stepped into the light, revealing Pinkie Pie, her once cheerful face twisted into something manic. Blood splattered across her mane, draped across her back like a broken doll was Sweetie Belle, limp, her neck bent at an unnatural angle, eyes wide and staring lifeless. "I thought you'd like it," Pinkie whispered, grinning wider than ever, her eyes wild with madness. "Isn't it just perfect?" Rarity screamed. "Ah!" Rarity's scream echoed through the boutique, a high-pitched wail of agony that reverberated through the walls, shaking the very foundation of her world. Her eyes locked on Sweetie Belle's limp body, disbelief warring with the sheer overwhelming horror that threatened to tear her apart. "No, no, no, no," she whimpered, stumbling back as her legs gave out, crumbling beneath her. Tears blurred her vision, but she couldn't tear her gaze away from the lifeless filly draped over Pinkie's back, her little sister, the one pony she'd vowed to protect above all else, gone. Pinkie Pie's grin stretched unnaturally wide, her head tilting in a grotesque imitation of innocence. She shifted slightly, Sweetie Belle's body slipping from her back and crumbling to the floor with a sickening thud. Limbs splaying awkwardly like a marionette with its strings cut, blood pooled beneath her, staining the boutique's pristine white floor in a deep, violent crimson. "I told you," Pinkie said, her voice sing-song and dripping with something too dark to be called joy. "Red is such a pretty colour." Rarity couldn't breathe. Her chest heaved, her lungs burning as she gasped for air. But the world around her felt distant, muffled, like she was sinking into a void of despair. Sweetie Belle's lifeless eyes stared up at her, glassy and vacant, her tiny mouth hanging open in a silent scream. "It can't be real. This can't be real." But it was. Rarity's heart shattered, her mind teetering on the edge of collapse as the truth bore down on her. Heavy and inescapable, the boutique, once her sanctuary, had become a tomb, and Pinkie Pie, Pinkie, the mare she had called a friend, was standing there, grinning like a lunatic, as if this was all just another game. Something inside Rarity snapped. The tears dried in her eyes, replaced by a cold, seething rage that burned hotter than the sun. Her horn flared to life, magic sparking violently as she rose to her hooves, the air around her crackling with raw energy. "You monster!" Rarity snarled, her voice trembling with fury, her magic swirling like a tempest around her. "How dare you!" Pinkie blinked, her grin faltering slightly as she tilted her head, looking almost confused. "What's wrong, Rarity? Don't you like my surprise?" Without warning, Rarity's magic lashed out, a bolt of pure force slamming into Pinkie's chest and sending her crashing into the wall. The impact shook the entire room, dust and debris falling from the ceiling as the wall cracked under the force of the blow. Pinkie giggled as she slid to the floor, coughing once, twice before looking up at Rarity with wide, gleeful eyes. "Oh, you want to play rough? Okay, I love rough games." She bounced to her hooves with manic energy, the blood dripping down her fur like it was nothing more than frosting from one of her cakes. Her eyes gleamed with madness, and her smile twisted into something darker, more feral. Rarity didn't hesitate. With a scream of fury, she hurled another blast of magic at Pinkie, but this time the pink mare was ready. She ducked, moving with an unnatural speed, and the blast hit the wall behind her, exploding in a shower of splintered wood and fabric. "Too slow, Rarity!" Pinkie sang, darting forward. Before Rarity could react, Pinkie was on her, faster than a blink, her hoop connecting with Rarity's jaw in a brutal punch that sent her sprawling to the floor. Pain exploded through Rarity's skull, her vision swimming, but she pushed through it, her magic flaring again as she sent a wave of force outward, knocking Pinkie back. But Pinkie was relentless. She bounced back to her hooves, laughing maniacally as she charged at Rarity again, her hooves slamming into her sides with a speed and strength that no earth pony should have possessed. Rarity gasped in pain, her ribs cracking under the force of Pinkie's blows. She tried to summon another spell, but Pinkie was too fast, too vicious. The next punch caught her square in the stomach, and Rarity doubled over, the wind knocked from her lungs. "Oh, come on, Rarity!" Pinkie taunted, her voice high-pitched and playful as ever, even as she brought her hoop down again and again, each hit more brutal than the last. "You're supposed to be the tough one. Where's all that fighting spirit? Where's the magic of friendship?" She giggled again, leaning in close, her breath hot against Rarity's ear. "I guess Sweetie Belle took it with her, huh?" That did it. Rarity's eyes flared wide with rage, her horn igniting with a blinding light. In a single desperate move, she unleashed all the magic she had left, a pulse of energy that sent Pinkie flying across the room, crashing into the far wall with a sickening crack. Panting, blood trickling from her mouth, Rarity struggled to her hooves, her legs trembling beneath her. Pinkie lay crumpled on the floor, still for a moment, her body limp like a broken doll. But Rarity knew it wasn't over. With a slow, deliberate movement, Pinkie pushed herself up, her body jerking and twisting as though it didn't quite fit together right. Her neck cracked as she tilted her head to look at Rarity, her grin wider than ever. "Wow, that was so fun," Pinkie chirped, her voice breathy and wild. "Let's do it again." Back at Fluttershy's cottage, the door rattled violently as Pinkie Pie's voice continued to taunt from outside. "Come on, Dashie, open up. I brought balloons and cake and a surprise." Fluttershy whimpered, hiding behind the sofa, her entire body shaking as the sounds from outside grew louder. More insistent, Rainbow Dash stood near the barricaded door, her wings flared, ready to fight if it came to that. But even Dash, as brave as she was, couldn't hide the fear in her eyes. "We have to get out of here," Dash muttered, glancing around the small cottage. "We can't stay. She'll find a way in." Fluttershy nodded, her breath coming in ragged gasps. But where do we go?" Dash gritted her teeth. "Twilight! If we can find Twilight, maybe she could stop this." The door creaked under the pressure, and Pinkie's giggle filtered through the cracks. "Oh, I know you're in there, Dashie! Come out wherever you are!" "We go now," Dash said, her voice firm. She turned to Fluttershy, extending a hoop. "Come on, we stick together!" Outside, the voice grew more frantic, more unhinged. Pinkie was losing patience. "Time's running out! Tick-tock, Dashie! Don't you want to see what happens when the balloons pop?" They didn't have much time. With a deep breath, Dash threw open the window, and the two mares bolted into the night, the shadows of Nightmare Night closing in around them. The night swallowed them as they fled, the cold air biting at their skin as they galloped through the darkened streets of Ponyville. Every corner seemed alive with danger, every alleyway a potential hiding place for Pinkie's deranged form. Fluttershy's breath came in short, panicked gasps, her legs trembling beneath her with each desperate step. She had never been a fast flyer, and fear made her wings feel heavy, as if the night itself was dragging her down. Rainbow Dash was right beside her, eyes sharp, darting between buildings and rooftops, constantly scanning for any sign of Pinkie. They could hear her giggles, distant now but still carrying on the wind, growing more hysterical with each passing second. "Keep moving," Dash urged, her voice taut with urgency. "We've got to get to Twilight. She'll know what to do." But deep down, even Dash couldn't shake the gnawing doubt clawing at her chest. Twilight was smart, maybe the smartest pony in all of Equestria. But what if even she couldn't stop Pinkie? What if it was too late? As they raced through the eerily quiet town, the sounds of Nightmare Night had all but died away. No more laughter, no more pranks, no more foals running through the streets in their costumes. The festival had ended abruptly, leaving only the suffocating silence in its wake. A silence broken only by the faint echo of Pinkie's manic laughter in the distance. They rounded the corner toward Twilight's castle, its crystalline spires gleaming in the moonlight. Relief surged through Fluttershy at the sight of it, but her legs were growing weaker by the second. She stumbled, her hooves catching on a loose stone, and she went sprawling to the ground with a yelp. "Fluttershy!" Dash skidded to a halt, rushing to her side. "Come on, we're almost there!" Fluttershy whimpered, her entire body shaking as she struggled to get back up. I can't. "Yes, you can," Dash urged, grabbing her by the hoop and pulling her up. "Come on, you can do this. We just need to make it a little further." But before they could, a voice drifted through the air, soft, sing-song and far too close for comfort. "Oh, Dashie, why are you running away? I thought we were having fun." They froze, hearts hammering in their chests. Slowly, they turned to see Pinkie Pie standing in the middle of the street behind them, her head cocked to one side, her eyes wide and gleaming with madness. She had a large, serrated knife clutched between her teeth, its blade glistening in the moonlight, dripping with fresh blood. Dash's wings flared in instinct, stepping protectively in front of Fluttershy. "Stay back, Pinkie! I'm warning you!" Pinkie just giggled, her tail twitching in excitement. "Why, Dashie? We're friends, and friends stick together until the very end." Fluttershy's knees buckled as terror threatened to consume her. She wanted to run, wanted to fly, but her body wouldn't obey. All she could do was stare, wide-eyed, as Pinkie slowly stepped forward, her movements jerky, almost puppet-like. Pinkie's voice dropped to a low, eerie whisper. "Let's play a game, Dashie. I promise it'll be fun. Just you, me, and the knife." Rainbow's mind raced, her thoughts jumbled with fear and adrenaline. She needed to get Fluttershy out of here, but Pinkie was too fast, too unpredictable. If they made a wrong move, it would be the last mistake they ever made. "We're not playing your sick games, Pinkie!" Dash growled, her voice shaking with barely contained fury. "We're getting to Twilight, and we're gonna stop you!" For a moment, Pinkie's grin faltered, her eyes twitched, her breath coming in short, rapid bursts. Then, without warning, her giggle turned into a crazed, high-pitched scream.
"Stop me!"
she shrieked, her voice breaking as she took a wild step forward, the knife flashing dangerously. "You can't stop me, Dashie! No one can stop me!"
"I'm everywhere!"
Dash reacted on pure instinct, shoving Fluttershy behind her and charging at Pinkie head-on. "Run, Fluttershy!" she shouted as she launched herself into the air, her wings carrying her with incredible speed as she aimed directly for Pinkie. Fluttershy didn't hesitate. She turned and ran, her hooves pounding against the ground as she bolted for Twilight's castle. Tears streamed down her face as she fled, but she didn't dare look back. She couldn't. If she looked back, she might see Dash fall. Rainbow collided with Pinkie mid-air, tackling her to the ground with a bone-jarring thud. The knife went skittering across the cobblestones, and for a brief, fleeting moment, Dash thought she might have the upper hoop. But Pinkie was stronger than she looked, much stronger. With a burst of unnatural strength, Pinkie shoved Dash off her, sending the Pegasus sprawling across the street. Dash barely had time to register the hit before Pinkie was on her again, her hooves slamming into her chest with a force that knocked the wind from her lungs. "Dashie, Dashie, Dashie!" Pinkie purred, her grin widening as she leaned in close, her breath hot against Dash's ear. "You really should have joined the party." Dash gasped, trying to catch her breath as she struggled beneath Pinkie's weight. But Pinkie was relentless, her hooves pressing down harder, squeezing the air from Dash's lungs, crushing her chest. "I didn't want it to end like this," Pinkie whispered, her voice soft and almost sorrowful. "But you left me no choice." With one last desperate burst of strength, Dash twisted, kicking her hind legs out and catching Pinkie off guard. The force of the kick sent Pinkie stumbling backwards, giving Dash just enough time to scramble to her hooves. "Not done yet!" Dash wheezed, her vision swimming, but even as she stood, she could feel her strength waning. She didn't know how much longer she could keep this up. Pinkie grinned, licking the blood from her lips as she grabbed the knife from the ground. The moonlight glinting off its jagged edge. "Oh, Dashie, you always were the tough one. but I think it's time to cut this short. She lunged. Fluttershy reached the entrance to Twilight's castle, her hooves shaking as she pounded on the door, her voice hoarse with desperation. "Twilight, please! Twilight, open up!" she cried, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Please! Please! We need your help!" For a moment there was nothing but silence, then the door slowly creaked open. But it wasn't Twilight standing on the other side. Fluttershy's heart froze as she looked up into the cold, emotionless eyes of a wooden puppet, a life-size, twisted version of Twilight, its painted-on smile frozen in a permanent mockery of her friend's usual warmth. The puppet tilted its head, the sound of creaking wood filling the air as its joints clicked and shifted unnaturally.
"Welcome, Fluttershy,"
it said in a voice that was too perfect, too hollow.
"Twilight can't come to the door right now, but I can take a message."
Fluttershy's scream tore through the night, but it was swallowed by the dark as the door slammed shut behind her. Ah! Fluttershy's scream echoed through the crystalline halls of Twilight's castle, reverberating up the cold walls before being swallowed by the oppressive silence. The puppet loomed over her, its blank painted eyes fixed on her with an unsettling intensity, its wooden limbs creaking as it took a step closer. Every movement was wrong, too smooth, too precise, like some unforeseen force was pulling at strings from the shadows. Fluttershy scrambled back, her heart hammering in her chest, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "This isn't Twilight. This isn't real. This can't be real." Her back hit the door, her legs trembling as she tried to steady herself, but there was nowhere to go. The puppet took another step, its mechanical voice cold and lifeless as it repeated.
"Twilight isn't here, Fluttershy. She's busy, but don't worry, we'll take good care of you."
The puppet's smile twisted, the corners of its wooden mouth creaking as they stretched impossibly wide, revealing sharp, splintered teeth beneath the painted surface. Fluttershy's body locked up in terror, her wings fluttered uselessly at her sides, paralyzed by the overwhelming fear that gripped her. She tried to scream again, but the sound died in her throat. The puppet lunged. Outside, Rainbow Dash struggled to her hooves, her entire body aching from the brutal fight with Pinkie. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth, her breath coming in ragged, painful bursts. Her vision swam, but she forced herself to stay upright, her legs wobbling beneath her. Pinkie was circling her, the blood-stained knife clutched tightly in her teeth, her eyes gleaming with a twisted, manic glee. She was toying with Dash, dragging this out, savouring every moment of her suffering. Dash gritted her teeth, her muscles burning with exhaustion. She knew she couldn't keep this up much longer. Pinkie was too fast, too strong, and Dash had taken too many hits. But she couldn't stop, not now, not while Fluttershy was still out there. "Why are you doing this, Pinkie?" Dash panted, her voice thick with pain. "What happened to you?" Pinkie tilted her head, her mane falling in wild tangles over her eyes as she giggled softly. "Oh, Dashy, nothing happened to me. This is just who I am. I thought you'd understand. After all, Nightmare Night's all about fun, right? And what's more fun than a little bloodshed?" She took a slow step closer, the knife glinting menacingly in the moonlight. "You were always so fast, Dashy, but you can't run forever." Pinkie purred, her voice dripping with malice. "Sooner or later, I'll catch you, and when I do, we're gonna have so much fun together." Dash's heart raced, her mind scrambling for a plan. She had to get to Fluttershy, she had to get to Twilight, but Pinkie was standing between her and the castle, and Dash knew she wouldn't let her go easily. With a growl of determination, Dash spread her wings. preparing to make one last desperate dash for the castle. She didn't care if Pinkie followed, she just needed to buy Fluttershy time. But before she could take off, a high-pitched whistle pierced the air, followed by a sharp, whizzing sound. Dash barely had time to react. She dodged just in time as a puppet, one of Pinkie's twisted creations, came flying out of the shadows, its wooden limbs snapping as it crashed into the ground where Dash had been standing moments before. The puppet twitched, its strings jerking violently as it struggled to rise again, its lifeless eyes fixed on Dash. Pinkie's giggles filled the air, louder now, more frenzied. "Oh, Dashy, meet my new friends! They're a little stiff, but they've got some killer moves!" Dash's eyes darted around, her heart sinking as more puppets emerged from the darkness, their wooden bodies creaking as they moved, strings dangling from unseen forces above. They surrounded her, closing in with eerie, jerky movements, their blank faces twisted into grotesque parodies of the ponies they once resembled. One of the puppets lunged, its splintered hooves reaching for her throat. Dash ducked, her wings flapping hard as she shot into the air, barely avoiding its grasp. But the sky was no refuge. More puppets hung from the rooftops, their strings tangling in the air as they swung toward her like grotesque marionettes, their wooden hooves clawing at the empty space where she flew. Dash weaved through them, her wings pumping furiously, adrenaline flooding her veins. She didn't have time to think, only react, dipping, dodging and swerving to avoid the puppets as they closed in from all sides. Inside the castle, Fluttershy's heart raced as the wooden puppet lunged toward her, its jagged teeth snapping inches from her face. She flung herself to the side, her hooves scrambling across the smooth floor as she tried to put as much distance between herself and the monstrous thing as possible. But it was fast, too fast. The puppet's joints creaked as it turned its head to follow her, its neck twisting unnaturally as it clacked its wooden teeth together, mimicking a sick version of a laugh. It scuttled forward, its hooves clicking against the floor as it advanced, its smile never faltering.
Fluttershy, Fluttershy, come out and play.
It crooned in that hollow, too-perfect voice, its painted eyes wide and unblinking. Fluttershy backed into a corner, her breath coming in shallow, panicked gasps. Her heart pounded in her ears, and her legs felt like they were about to give out. She couldn't fight this. She wasn't Rainbow Dash or Applejack. She wasn't strong or brave. All she had was her kindness, and right now, kindness wouldn't save her. The puppet reached for her, its sharp, splintered hooves closing in. Fluttershy squeezed her eyes shut, bracing herself for the end. But then, a sudden burst of magic filled the air, a brilliant flash of violet light that sent the puppet flying across the room, its body crashing into the wall with a deafening crack. Fluttershy's eyes snapped open, and standing in the center of the room, her horn glowing with raw power, was Twilight Sparkle. "Get away from her!" Twilight shouted, her voice filled with fury as her magic flared, the air crackling with energy. The puppet twitched, once, twice, before collapsing into a lifeless heap on the floor. "Twilight!" Fluttershy cried, tears of relief spilling down her cheeks as she stumbled forward, throwing herself into Twilight's embrace. "It's okay, Fluttershy," Twilight whispered, holding her close. "I'm here. I'm not going to let anything happen to you." But even as she said the words, Twilight's eyes flicked towards the door, her brow furrowing with worry. "Where's Rainbow Dash?" Fluttershy's breath hitched, her voice trembling. She's still out there. Pinkie's after her." Twilight's heart sank. She knew they didn't have much time. If Pinkie had truly lost herself to whatever dark force was driving her, there was no telling what she was capable of. "We need to find her," Twilight said, her voice grim. She glanced toward the window, where the shadows of Ponyville stretched long and foreboding under the moonlight. "And we need to stop Pinkie before she hurts anyone else." Outside, Rainbow Dash fought to stay airborne, dodging and weaving as more puppets hurled themselves at her. Each one seemed more relentless than the last, their strings tangling in the night sky like a web of death. She was running out of room to maneuver, and her energy was fading fast. But she couldn't stop, not yet, not while Fluttershy was still in danger. Suddenly, a flash of violet light illuminated the night, cutting through the darkness. Dash's heart leapt as she recognized the magic. It was Twilight. "Hang on, Dash!" Twilight's voice rang out from below. With a surge of hope, Dash drove toward the castle, her wings straining as she pushed herself faster, dodging the last of the puppets. Twilight stood in the doorway, her horn blazing with magic, blasting the puppets out of the sky as they approached. As Dash landed beside her, panting and battered, Twilight shot her a worried glance. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," Dash wheezed, clutching her side where Pinkie had landed a blow. "But Pinkie's still out there. She's lost it, Twilight. We have to stop her." Twilight's expression darkened. "We will." And in the distance, from the shadows of the town, a low, eerie giggle echoed through the night. Pinkie Pie was still out there, and the nightmare was far from over. The air inside Twilight's castle was thick with tension as the remaining elements of harmony gathered, their faces grim, reflecting the terrible reality they now faced. The once vibrant, joyful town of Ponyville was now overshadowed by the madness that had overtaken one of their own, Pinkie Pie, the element of laughter. Twilight stood at the center of the room, her expression hard and resolute, though her heart felt heavy with the weight of what they were about to do. Her eyes flickered over her friends, each of them bearing their own scars, physical and emotional, from the nightmare that had unfolded. Rainbow Dash, bruised and battered but determined. Fluttershy, her soft eyes red-rimmed from tears, trembling yet steadfast. Applejack, silent, her face a mask of barely restrained grief. And Rarity, her usual grace shattered, her gaze hollow and distant after what she'd witnessed. But one face was missing. One voice, usually full of laughter, was now tainted with the shrill edge of madness. Pinkie Pie had turned on them all, consumed by something far darker than any of them could have predicted. And now, the only way to stop her was to use the elements of harmony. But even that presented a problem. Pinkie Pie was one of the elements. Twilight's mind raced with the terrible implications. They needed all 6 elements to achieve their full power, but with Pinkie lost to her insanity, they had no choice but to break the very bond that made them strong. "We can't do it without her, Twi," Applejack said quietly, breaking the silence. Her voice was thick with sorrow. "The elements won't work if one of us is missing." Twilight's stomach twisted. She knew Applejack was right. Without Pinkie, the elements wouldn't be able to channel their magic as they had before. But there was a way. A terrible, desperate way. I could take her place," Twilight said, her voice wavering but resolute. "If I used the element of laughter in addition to magic, I might be able to channel enough power to..." "To what?" Rarity interrupted, her voice sharp with anguish. "Seal her away? Banish her to the moon like Nightmare Moon? How can we even think of doing that to Pinkie?" Fluttershy's soft voice broke in, barely above a whisper. "What choice do we have, Rarity? She's not herself anymore. She's hurting ponies, killing ponies. We have to stop her," Rainbow Dash said firmly, though her eyes were shadowed with guilt. "I hate this too, but we can't let her keep doing this. We have to protect Ponyville." Rarity's lip trembled as she turned away, unable to look at any of them. She knew Rainbow was right, but the thought of doing this to one of their closest friends, to Pinkie of all ponies, it tore her apart. The memories she had buried resurfaced. "She killed my sister, my darling sister." Twilight closed her eyes, drawing a deep breath to steady herself. She didn't want this either. Pinkie had been the light in their group, the one who always found a way to make them smile even in the darkest times. And now, that light had become twisted, dangerous, and out of control. "There's no other way," Twilight said softly, her voice barely audible. "We have to steal her away. for her own sake and the safety of every pony. She levitated the elements of harmony before them, their familiar glow filling the room with an almost somber light. But where there was usually 6, one lay cold and unresponsive, the element of laughter. Twilight swallowed hard as she placed the element of laughter upon herself, its magic resisting her touch at first, as if it knew this wasn't right, but she pushed through, forcing herself to connect with it, to pull its power into her own. Her horn flared with radiant light, and the others, one by one, reached for their elements. Applejack, honesty; Rarity, generosity; Fluttershy, kindness; Rainbow Dash, loyalty; and Twilight, now bearing both magic and laughter. The power surged through them, but it felt different this time, unbalanced, as though something vital had been ripped from the harmony they usually shared. The absence of Pinkie's presence, her laughter, was like a jagged wound in their connection, but they had to press on. Twilight's voice was strained as she gave the final command. Focus! We have to channel the magic. We're going to seal Pinkie away, in the moon, like Nightmare Moon. The room trembled as their combined magic swirled into a blinding vortex of light, the energy growing with every second, pulling them closer to the moment they all dreaded. Outside, the castle doors burst open with a crash, and Pinkie's crazed laughter filled the halls, echoing like a twisted melody. Oh, I can feel it, Dashy! The party's just getting started! Pinkie staggered into the room, the knife still clutched in her mouth, her eyes wild and wide, her entire body twitching with erratic movements. What are you doing with my element, Twilight? That's not very nice. You're trying to leave me out of the fun, aren't you? Her grin stretched wider, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light as she slowly advanced on them, her voice turning dark. But I won't let you. I won't be left behind. Not again. Now! Twilight shouted, her voice cutting through the madness as she unleashed the full power of the elements. The magic surged, a rainbow of energy enveloping Pinkie, who let out a high-pitched, gleeful scream. Her body fought against the magic, twisting and jerking, but the power was too strong, too overwhelming. Slowly, the rainbow light spiraled upward, pulling her along with it, lifting her off the ground. See you in 1,000 years, girls! Pinkie shrieked, her laughter breaking into a shrill, maniacal cackle as the magic swirled faster and faster around her. I'll be back, and we'll have so much fun! With a final blinding flash of light, Pinkie Pie was gone. The room fell silent, the only sound the ragged breathing of the ponies left behind. Twilight collapsed to her knees, her horn still glowing faintly as the magic ebbed away, leaving her drained and trembling. The others stood frozen, their eyes wide, the enormity of what they had just done crashing down on them. She's really gone, Twilight whispered, her voice breaking as tears welled in her eyes. Rainbow Dash clenched her jaw, her wings hanging limp at her sides. We had to do it. She gave us no choice. Applejack didn't say a word, only lowering her hat over her eyes, her shoulders slumped with the weight of the decision. Twilight stood slowly, her legs shaking beneath her as she gazed up at the night sky. The moon hung high, full and bright, and there, etched into its surface, was the faint, unmistakable image of Pinkie Pie, sealed away for 1,000 years. I hope one day we can forgive ourselves, Twilight whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. And I hope she can forgive us too. They returned to the castle map room. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence as the final echoes of magic dissipated. Twilight's chest heaved with exhaustion, her legs trembling beneath her as she stared at the elements of harmony resting on the table. They had once been vibrant, radiant with the magic of friendship, but now they lay dull, lifeless, their brilliant glow extinguished. Each gem, once a symbol of their bond, was cracked and broken, their surfaces fractured like shattered glass. The elements, her friends' elements, had lost their power. Twilight's heart sank, the weight of the moment pressing down on her with the force of a collapsing sky. She knew what this meant. The elements were gone. They had been the lifeblood of Equestria's greatest defense, the force that had kept darkness at bay time and time again. But now, after what they had just done to Pinkie Pie, they had failed. The elements... Twilight's voice was barely a whisper, her eyes filling with unshed tears. They're broken. The others slowly gathered around her, their faces etched with shock and disbelief. Rarity gasped slowly as she lifted the element of generosity, its once brilliant purple gem now cracked down the middle, the magic within it long gone. "Oh no! Oh darling!" Her voice wavered as she gently placed it back on the ground, as though touching it any longer would shatter it completely. Rainbow Dash stared at her own element, loyalty, with a tight frown, her wings twitching. "It's gone," she muttered, her eyes flicking to Twilight. We broke them." "They ain't never gonna work again, are they?" Applejack asked quietly, her hoot grazing over Honesty's once gleaming orange gem, now dull and lifeless. Fluttershy stood frozen, staring down at Kindness with wide, tear-filled eyes. Her voice was a shaky whisper. "What do we do now?" Twilight swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak through the lump forming in her throat. "The elements are gone," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the shattered remains before her. "We used them to seal away Pinkie, but in doing so, we destroyed them. We've broken the very magic that held us together." The silence in the room deepened, thick with unspoken grief. "Without the elements, we won't be able to protect Equestria the way we used to." Twilight's voice trembled as she finally looked up, meeting the eyes of her friends, her heart heavy with the truth she knew she had to say. "In 1,000 years, when Pinkie Pie returns, it won't be us standing against her." Rarity's breath hitched, her hoop covering her mouth as the meaning of Twilight's words sank in. You mean..." Twilight nodded, her expression hardening with a grim resolve. "It'll be 6 new ponies, 6 brave souls just like we were, who will have to face Pinkie when she returns." Rainbow Dash's eyes narrowed, her voice sharp with disbelief. "New ponies? But we're the elements! We're supposed to be the ones who..." "No," Twilight cut her off, shaking her head. "Not anymore. We were the elements, but without Pinkie, without laughter, the magic we shared is broken. We can't be the ones to stop her when she escapes. We won't be around for that fight." Dash's jaw clenched, her wings twitching in frustration. "Then what do we do? Just sit here and wait for everything to fall apart?" Twilight sighed deeply, her voice soft but resolute. "We protect Equestria the best we can for as long as we can. We'll have to find other ways to keep the peace, to stop threats before they grow too large. But when Pinkie returns..." Her gaze shifted toward the window, to the moon hanging in the night sky. "When she comes back, it'll be up to the next generation of ponies. They'll be the ones who wield the new elements of harmony." Fluttershy let out a quiet sob, her tears spilling over as she looked up at the moon, where the faint outline of Pinkie Pie's face was now visible, much like nightmare moons had been before her. "But what if they're not ready? What if no pony is brave enough to stand up to her?" "We weren't ready either," Applejack said quietly, her voice laced with sorrow. "But we stood up when the time came." Twilight nodded, though her heart felt like it was being torn in two. "We didn't know what we were getting into back then. We didn't know the power we had until we used it. It'll be the same for them. They'll rise when the time comes." Rarity took a shaky breath, wiping her eyes with a trembling hoof. "And what of us, darling? What do we do with this?" She gestured to the remnants of the elements, her gaze full of sadness. "We remember what we've done," Twilight replied, her voice thick with emotion. "We live with the choices we've made. and we make sure Equestria is ready for when Pinkie returns." A long, heavy silence settled over the room as the weight of their actions sank in, the finality of it all wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud. The elements of harmony, once the most powerful force in Equestria, were gone, and the friends who had once wielded them stood broken, their bond forever changed by the loss of one of their own. Twilight's eyes lingered on the moon, her mind racing with thoughts of the future, of the day, 1,000 years from now, when 6 new ponies would be forced to face Pinkie Pie. Would they be strong enough? Would they understand the power of friendship the way Twilight and her friends once had? The answer was impossible to know. All she could do was hope that, somewhere out there, 6 new ponies would rise to the challenge, ponies who would take up the mantle of the elements of harmony and stand against the darkness once more. Twilight closed her eyes, her voice barely an audible whisper. "May they be ready." Author's note: did you enjoy this contest entry? I write commissions. DM me with story ideas.
The moon is high, the night is cold. Ponyville's tales are being retold. Nightmare nights in full swing, but beware the shadows where puppets cling. Pinkie's smile stretches wide with secrets that she tries to hide. Beneath the mask, her laughter's thin. A darker game is about to begin. When laughter turns to screams, beware the joy is twisted in the air. Pinkie's playtime has gone awry. Now every pony's asking why. Myra felt the puppet's grip, cold wood against her trembling lips. Big Mac stood with hollow eyes, and Rainbow saw through the disguise. Fluttershy hides her heart beats fast, hoping that the horror won't last. Twilight's castle holds a clue, but Pinkie's lurking, coming for you. When laughter turns to screams, beware the joy is twisted in the air. Pinkie's giggles mask her pain. Now Ponyville won't be the same. Rarity cries for Sweetie's fate, too late to save her from the gate. Elements shatter, magic's gone as madness carries on and on. Dashy flies but can't escape, the night's a deadly twisted shape. Pinkie's grin is far too wide, she's let the darkness step inside. When laughter turns to screams, beware the fun is twisted in the air. Pinkie's playtime has gone awry. Now every pony's asking why. The puppets dance in eerie light, strings pulled tight on this cursed night. Pinkie's voice echoes down the street, a haunting tune no pony can beat. Twilight bites, her magic flares, but darkness lingers in the air. Ponyville crumbles, truth unfolds, a tale of terror that's never told. Fluttershy's tears and Rainbow's rage won't free them from this twisted stage. The clock is ticking, the night grows long. Pinkie hums her eerie song. 6 will rise in 1,000 years to face the darkness, fight their fears. But for now, the night is lost and Ponyville pays the final cost. So lock your doors, hide from the fright, for no one's safe this haunted night. Pinkie's games have just begun, and she won't stop till the night is done. Channel Mystery, also available as a podcast on Spotify. Bonnie and Izzy Rainbow is the story, by the way. Fiction. Fiction. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You can also become a member for early access and exclusive content. Only $149 a month.